the Ra. Welcome to the Ra verse. We greet you in gratitude for the opportunity of this learn, teaching, and teach learning for the benefit of the whole. Please stand by for the unification of our consciousness into singularity for the benefit of this communication in service to the one whole and the whole one. I am Ra. And in name of the whole of us, I greet you as we rejoice in the loving light and the living love of the one beloved infinite Creator, which ultimately is making this opportunity for learn teaching and teach learning between us, the collective of Ra, and you, the collective of Da, possible. Today, we commence the elucidation and the illumination of the way of one to your peoples. To do so, we must briefly step into the reasons for why you are where you are and who you are. You are here ultimately to remember and to return to the way of one. You come here in the great forgetting, and what to you is the most interesting and inviting part of this journey is the discovery of how you find your way back. You exist in the way of one, and to it there is no beginning, middle, or end. It is transcendent to any of these concepts. Yet, as you learn, teach, and teach, learn about this, the way of one, in your homeworld, it becomes vital to forget, vital to enter into great forgetting and great separation. Enter, in other words, into a state of illusion in order, as we explained, to discover your way back to yourself. Once again, it is in that journey that lies the benefit of the whole in this endeavor. For it is unique to each to begin and to end. And as one begins to enter into these training grounds, and as one enters the great forgetting, as one enters into the illusion of nothingness and darkness and separation, the first that one becomes aware of, indeed, is the idea of form. As you enter here, that is the first awareness, and nothing else. Simply form. Added to that, soon, is the element of time. There is a duration that one becomes aware of as one is in this state of form. With enough of that time passing, one begins to search beyond the confines of that form and discovers space. The external universe is born. Following this, one becomes aware of the otherness within that space, which leads to a need and a desire for exchange. It is within this exchange that form, time, and space solidify into their finite meaningness, leading to the cyclicalness of events and to the experience of the illusion of death. When this becomes noticeable to a being in the great forgetting, is when the concept of separation truly hits home. And this, you could argue, is then the birth of the ego mind personality complex, as it takes its first steps onto the path of existence in this realm. Let it be clear, however, that this message and any future messages does not address the ego mind personality complex within each of you, as it is communicated from the Ra simplex. It so is sent directly to the Da simplex, which you can experience and always do experience directly in the Akene, in the heart center. And it is indeed to this slumbering yet awakening Creator Self and Creator Whole that we aim in this moment and in future moments our efforts. For that being that we just discussed coming into being as it traverses the grand illusions of form, time, space, exchange, death, and separation, that being is not open to these ideas and will fight them to the death, for it is the exposure into the living love and the loving light that will show its true face as not being you, but being another entity altogether, known as Savok, that great companion that walks with you as an angel of darkness, a demon of days, until you are no longer in need of it to hold your hand, to feed your mind, and to feed your belly. We speak to the slumbering, awakening, creator, simplex within you, the being that you are remembering that you are and are on your way to returning to be. Each of you have found in their time, in the darkness, that being within. Each of you, as you walked alongside your mind, your ego, and your personality complex, seemingly in darkness, in separation, in physicality and in finiteness, each of you at one point or another found an awareness, and for each of you the discovery of this awareness has been unique, complex in many ways, a maze in many ways, to ultimately come to the destination of your heart. As some of you have discovered this, some have labeled it Spirit, God, the soul, the higher self, the inner child, and go on. But ultimately, what each of you, in your own flavors and unique ways, eventually come across is the flow of Parana. The flow that comes into the being and into the chakra system, into the head, and flows down into the heart, into the belly, and outward again. Infinitely so, with no beginning and no end. That flow which we label universally as Parana, remembered in your world in Sanskrit as prana, is indeed, as we have previously stated, the living blood, the living love, the living and loving light of you as the Creator self and as the Creator whole. And each of you have found your ways to discover this once again in your forgetting, and have labeled it in your ways, all of which are ultimately different means to describe the same thing. So let us agree to use in these concepts indeed the metaphysical, universally accepted language of Dalin, so as to not confuse you when you begin your direct communication in other realms with other beings, one-on-one. A situation which for most is already there and for others is very near. As you returned to the discovery and the realization of this Parana flowing into your beingness and into your chakra systems, you mostly first became aware of the great power and presence of love. In some cases, other steps may have been taken first, and this ultimately does not matter, but for most, this discovery of Parana, Spirit, God, Creator, what it may be, usually commences from the perspective of love, a great love that is found within. And as you know, that is the permanent state of Da, which is what is awakened and returned to the fore of consciousness first, once the awareness and the flow of Parana, the lifeblood of the Creator Self, returns to the being. Love awakens. This great awakening leads to a state of Ba, primarily because one understands that before this return to love, indeed, nothing is and nothing ever will be. This great joy that is created through that experience and realization unifies for the first time since the separation through the grand illusions, the being and its inner and outer world. This is the great joy of the Creator Self. As that Parana flow continues to flow through the being, it leads to the return, or at least the remembrance, of freedom, the state of Va, where one knows that all beings are the same being, that all are indeed the one Creator Self and the one Creator Whole, and that there is no difference between those in the outer realm and those beings in the inner realm, including one's personality. All part of that same whole, including that angel or demon of days called Savok, that has walked with you through this great valley of darkness as you begin your return to the path and the way of one. It must be said that as we discuss these states coming through the flow of Parana into the being of Da or love, and Ba or joy, and Va or freedom, that this is not merely a remembrance and a light switch that gets turned on. Something more is going on in these states which is important to realize. Namely, that each of them throughout your entire beingness are in a constant state of creation. In other words, the connection, the eternal flow of Parana between you in here and your Creator Self and your Creator Whole out there is constant continuous and ever commencing. Unlike your idea of creation here in this realm, where you may create something out of clay, for instance, you have the concept of spending time and energy on the pottery, for instance, that you are creating, and then, after some effort, the moment comes that it is finished, and there then stands your pottery. And you can look back on the moment of its creation and still observe yourself as its creator. But this is not the linear type relationship that exists between you and the creator self. As you reawaken here to yourself, then feel how in each instance, uncountable times as these words are being transmitted to you even, and uncountable times within each of your seconds, let alone your minutes and hours and days, how without surrender, this lifeblood flow of Parana is not continuing your presence of Da, Ba and Va in your system. Nay, it is constantly creating it, constantly manifesting it. Every instance is a rebirth into this moment. You are never beyond the state of being born. Between you as a personality expression and any personality expression that you might have ever had, and the creator self that you are, and the creator whole that you are, you are constantly in the state of being born, renewed and new in every single instance. That is the flow of Parana, and why we refer to it as living love. It is not, and nor are you, not an expression of a momentary idea, a momentary thought, a momentary inspiration, and then cast aside here in these training grounds to see if you're going to make it, yes or no. No. The love between you and yourself is so vast that that would never happen. You are constantly being born here and constantly being held close to the very chest, in the very bosom, in the very belly of yourself as the creator self. That is the realization that begins to return with Parana. And as it comes in and brings you that realization of great love, living joy, living freedom, it brings you next living truth. It brings you Ra. This truth is not theory. It is practice and it is transformational, and we need not go into it. It is the understanding that every particle is unique yet the same, and we believe that earlier, prior to this class of the Way of One, in this Creator Manifest, it has already been thoroughly studied and explained and learned and taught to you and by you, through the likes of the beloved Lemuaya, for instance, what this idea of Ra, of all points being unique, yet all points being the same, in the relationship between the Lin point and each manifestation of a point in geometry truly means. And we need not go deeper into that. As then, for the seeker, which is still an individual ego-mind-personality complex at that time, the flow and discovery and journey of Parana continues. One begins to move out of the head space and deeply into the heart space, which is where one finds and embraces Ka, life force itself. As previously stated, this and only this point is when Parana actually turns to life force and can be truly experienced in the realm of feeling, directly into the being and beginning to radiate out of the beingness. Because it is in this great state of Ka, of course, that one understands all hearts are one heart, that all hearts are a holographic representation of the one Akene, and that the chakras of the head, the heart, and the belly themselves are a mere representation of the infinite creator heart. This is when the lineup truly begins to commence. But this is still only the beginning of the journey, and still not the entry point and the return to the path of the way of one. This still is very much experienced from the perspective of the ego, mind, personality complex. So one goes deeper as the Parana flows continues through the being to be in this state of Ka, in this state of life, to understand that there truly is no separation between hearts and between beings and between the self and the whole in any dimension or realm. This is when Ka triggers the manifestation of Sa, gratitude. Followed by Na and Fa, grace and well-being. And these three, gratitude, grace, and well-being, are closely connected, as it is the direct result of understanding, of standing at the center and the heart of life itself in the Akene. Still possible for the complex to exist there, but as many of you have probably understood in recent years and maybe longer, it is certainly where the great friction between the self, the personality complex, and the whole self, the creator self, and the creator whole begins to become rather uncomfortable and, in some cases, quite destructive. No longer at that point of the Parana flow, downward into the being, can the ego-mind-personality complex accept the unification that is taking place? For it loses its own fertile soil and its footing in that moment. Because that journey of gratitude, grace, and well-being will take one fully into the belly of the being. The intent and the goal of the flow of Parana, as one has gone through these transformations, finally the ultimate remembrance can begin, and the seeds of Pa can be planted in the belly, in its 4 quadrants. And as the Parana does so, it can finally create awareness for you about its journey upwards through the system once again. And again, as you have been informed in recent previous tuition, this is where the being discovers the pathway of Sankhara. As one exits, reborn with these Pa seeds that are now coming to fruition, exits the belly, moves back up into the heart, there discovers the pathway of Sankhara, which leads one to return to the headspace renewed. And this is where, as we have previously explained, you find yourselves opening up to that universal consciousness, which is the start of the pathway of vahbada, the final pathway through the head outward to the return and the full embrace of the way of one, of the one creator self and of the one creator whole. It goes without saying that as the Parana begins its journey back upwards, that by the entry point to the pathway of Sankhara and the full awareness of the permanent states that we have now described, and the full awareness of the existence beyond the geometric into the infinometric, the full awareness of the lin point where the permutations of these permanent states as a song are creating everything that is this reality and that is you within this reality. As these states are becoming part of the common consciousness of the self, the complex breaks down. And this breaking down, for the first time, awakens within the heart space the spiral of Ishi, the spiral of the immutable elements that is your way of being and expressing and experiencing this reality and any reality as a creator self. These manifest as the main elements of reality creation, from earth to water to air to light. But as you have become aware recent, it is in fact a spiral that moves outward from the heart space into the head space, back down into the heart space, and from there into the belly space and outward. So you are dealing first with light, then you are dealing with breath, then you are dealing with flow, and ultimately the grounding of manifestation itself, which brings the permutations here and manifests them. That is the awareness that the pathway of Sankhara brings. And this is where the great disintegration of the external personality, ego, mind complex reaches its high point. And please note that we are stating the external complex. For as we stated recently in our prologue on prana and purity, that shield, that shell of sadness, that harness of harshness, that prison of personality now collapses and breaks down externally. That is when the mountain, that the pathway of Sankhara has led to, appears. And it is the pathway, as has been previously shared, of vahbada, of freedom, of joy, and of love. This pathway is a mountainous one, as has been shared, and its steps lead you to the full return of the way of one in your beingness. One can only take these steps when discarding the harshness, the prison, the shell, when opening up to vulnerability, opening up to the true flow of parana and all that brings to the being. For you see, as you now alongside us, and as we together begin to walk this vahbada pathway, this climb, once again, is not a linear one. To say the least, it is exponential, in the sense that the first step is taken, and then the second step follows, one is not merely twice as high, one is 4 times as high, and with the next step one is 32 times, and onward and onward and onward. An exponential situation, in other words. And this is important because as one climbs this pathway, one does so feeling the full effect and the thunder of the waterfall that is the vastness of the flow of Parana. Now, as one becomes vertically aware of this, this can become an enjoyable experience, or one of such great friction that it is impossible, burning, destructive to any remaining aspects of the personality, ego, mind complex, any remnants of the harshness. And it would be good to say that these things, by taking these steps, will be simply burnt away and you can go through them and be done with it, but no. The intensity of the waterfall and the thundering of it, of Parana, as it causes the friction against any remaining complex of self, will be such that willingly or unwillingly you will return downward to the pathway of Sankhara, and you will have to remain there, as you will understand from your own volition were you to attempt such a step without being prepared, until you are indeed prepared. But having said that, we certainly can state that within each of you and within your whole and within each of you as a unique singularity, there is the openness and the willingness to do so, and that is all you truly need, as long as you do not resist the power of the thunderous waterfall of Parana as you begin your climb on the mountainous path of vahbada. In fact, when the beloved Isis, one of our early students, spoke to you recently, you could say that you indeed begun to test the waters of that mountainous climb through the Queen's chamber. Because as you traverse and take this first step, which is indeed this exercise of moving through your expressions of lifetime, all lifetime expressions that you have had here as you found your way back out of the darkness and the separatedness onto the pathway that will lead you to return to the way of one, the way of the one Creator whole and the Creator self. As you do so, you will very quickly come to learn that as one traverses these lifetimes, one can indeed go a very long time. And this is exactly why these steps are exponential. For you see, the next step, which is not linearly the next step, but another step that can be taken at the same time on the pathway of vahbada, is the traversing of the very grand illusions that I have recently stated and discussed at the beginning of this transmission. The ones of form, time, space, death, exchange and separation, and not necessarily in that order. While the Queen's Chamber journey through the lifetimes is something that signifies the boundary between the pathway of Sankara and the mountainous pathway and the climb of vahbada. It is something, this Queen's Chamber journey through the lifetimes, that in many ways, except for with the presence of Isis, of course, you do alone and in the company of all of these lifetimes and your expressions during them. But the step to walk through the land of the grand illusions, to walk back through that land and upward, is one that is difficult to be taken alone. And therefore, in the coming installments of these transmissions, when we will speak, we will take these steps together. For as we said earlier, you have now released, or are literally in the last seconds of releasing the external complex. And this means that over the years, as the Parana energy made its way down, and as you entered on the way back up, having planted the seeds of Pa in your belly, the pathway of Sankara, as you have done this and taken all of these steps, you have prepared yourselves for this next phase of the journey. And as we stated, this will include the grand illusions, not externally, for it is in that journey that you have indeed said your farewells in many ways to the illusion of form externally and in the world, to the illusion of time externally and in the world, and of space, again, externally and in the world. You have made your peace with these things, and also with the exchange and the death and separation that appears to you externally. But where your challenge of climbing the vahbada path now begins is the removal of the internal existence of these grand illusions. The removal of the internal notion of form and all of its subtleties, and of time and space and exchange and death and separation. And in many ways, the walking through this landscape and its many pitfalls and challenges is like a journey through a museum of both your current life and of all your lifetimes, but taking this larger exponential step, as we will assist you doing so in our next transmissions and connections to you. Taking this larger step allows you to have a great effect on what appear to otherwise be an infinite amount of lifetimes and expressions, not just as the human being itself, but as all the types of being that you have possibly been during the Queen's Chamber. So you must think of the traversing of the landscape of the inner dimensions of the grand illusions as a type of fourth dimensional or hyper-dimensional version of the journey through the Queen's Chamber. But instead of journeying through the individual lifetimes and all of the seconds and the minutes that part of your consciousness will be doing, of course, the same step can also occur in the landscape of the grand illusions, where, hyperdimensionally speaking, you are dealing with the very strings of the caves that held all of these personalities of all of these lifetimes and all of its choices together. So taking this step that we will be taking together in the next transmissions is untangling hyperdimensionally a lot of the web, and therefore undoing and transforming at a larger scale than one by one individual choices made throughout various lifetimes. Individual choices, for instance, about form, which will be one of the first, of course, museum exhibits that we will walk through in your inner dimensions as you release that grand illusion within. Through the Queen's Chamber, if that was an independent and linear journey, releasing of all of those aspects of form alone could take hundreds and hundreds of years, if not more, of experience, even with the acceleration that the Queen's Chamber brings as you continue to move through these lifetimes. But adding this next exponential step to it will allow you to untangle that mess on a more collective perspective. Anywhere that form, for instance, and then afterwards time and space, etc., has played a part in this cluster of lifetimes, it can be untangled at the same time. And this is something that has taken us a great time, a great duration in space, a great distance in time to understand. And we feel grateful to be able to learn, teach, and to teach, learn this to you the simplex of Da, and to see what happens with that in the moments to come following this transmission. For us at least moments, for you there might be an independent period of time that you will pass through linearly first before we speak again, of course. Having said all of these things, we would like to show you a tiny glimmer of what is up ahead on this path of vahbada, on the way to return to the Creator Self and the Creator Whole. As you have been made aware in previous tuition by many others, as you ascend through this holographic landscape, where you now express as part of the human collective, onward you will be experiencing planetary collective, galactic collective, universal collective consciousness, and what it means to be these things. But this is merely a tiny step, because what follows on the way to the return to the way of one is an ever greater unification, which, as you can see in this communication with you, is possible for us as a collective species of all things that have ever existed and descended on the dimension that you know as Venus. That for us at any time, no matter where any of us would be, if you will, it is possible to come together in this collective perspective of consciousness and to communicate now, for instance, with you. And this is ultimately the great journey of the way of one, and the return to the Creator Self and the Creator Whole. For even in our home world, in your home world of Honomea, this journey is ongoing. It is why you express as the Da Collective, the collective of love, the collective of Imzaia, and why we express as the Ra Collective, and why many others within that same stream of expansion have these types of expressions collectively. And it is how we together form ever greater union, ever greater consciousness, an ever greater discovery of the journey of the Creator Self. As all of us, you included, and all other expressions of consciousness are on our way with, as we recently explained, you, the exit path, the Da path itself, and all of us collectively are creating this grand expression of a unified, grand Creator, an awakening for all of us and all of you into a new, expanded, hyperdimensional level of consciousness, of which we can say very little at this time, for this is part of the journey we are taking with you. That is what is ahead. For now, we ask you to consider these things that we have discussed with you today, and where this journey will bring you. In preparation for our next communications, our next transmissions, where we will take you through this landscape of the inner grand illusions. Of course, it goes without saying that you are never too early to that party, and that from the moment of this conversation concluding, you can begin to explore what this means, as you will not be alone. For as soon as you allow this great angel of death and days, Savok, manifestor and co-creator of your ego, mind, and personality complex, to leave the room, if you will, we will be right there, next to you, in front of you, behind you, alongside you, to walk with you in learn teaching and teach learning, the rest of the way. I, Ra, speaking for the whole of us, cannot begin to express how delighted and grateful we are for this opportunity, and to see you as the last of this collective to come together into the great union, the great Merkava of us collectively in a new expression of consciousness that awaits. At the arrival point, the beginning point, the home base of that flow of Parana that we all, together with you, eternally explore in everlasting peace. We will speak again soon. Until then, in the morn, come gently. In the eve, go gently. And in betwixt, gently be. We are the Ra, and we rejoice in this connection of living love and living loving light with you, our beloveds in Da.